Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. So I've got my latest Inktober piece here. The prompt word is armadillo. And as you can see, I've got the layout all done in pencil. These two little armadillo warriors trudging through this snowy landscape. I thought it would be a fun opportunity to do another inking process video. So without further ado, let's get started on that inking. Armadillos are interesting creatures, and I thought that taking the opportunity to do kind of anthropomorphized armadillos would be fun. So it doesn't have to be exactly like an armadillo, of course, because it is fantasy. But I want to at least give the sense that it is armadillo-ish. So they have this kind of a bony plated skin over their head, top of their head. It's like a little helmet. And the word armadillo actually means little armored ones. So when I saw that prompt word, the first thing that kind of came to mind was a little warrior, a little armored warrior. So we've got the basics of the face here, and I'll probably put more detail in there eventually, but for now I'm going to leave it at that. And just gonna keep on going down. So this armor is obviously different from the actual armor on an armadillo. On an armadillo, this is all sort of one big piece. But I kind of modified it a little bit since these are anthropomorphized armadillos. And I'm giving him little spikes on his back too. Maybe those spikes are added on, something they attach to themselves to make them more fierce. Seems like kind of a fun idea. And the armor itself is going to have these little rounded parts like that. So I really like this pattern that I chose for the armor. It looks a lot like actual armadillo armor. They have these sort of lines of dots, these rows of dots. So that's why I kind of drew these guidelines. I'm drawing these ink guidelines and then placing my circles within them just to keep the dots, circles in a row. So just want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching this. And this, as usual, will be a shorter version of the video on YouTube, and there will be a longer version available on my Patreon. I'll put a link in the description box below. But I do appreciate all of my supporters over on Patreon. They make videos like this possible by supporting my work and allowing me to devote more of my time to this type of thing, and in turn provide videos on YouTube as well. So a huge shout out and thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon, all of my Ink Knights. You are greatly appreciated. So this is looking pretty good. I'm happy with it so far. It's fun to do a fantasy piece like this. It's almost more fairy tale-ish and more a little more playful in its approach. So to take a like an anthropomorphized version of an animal like an armadillo. I've always admired artists that do that type of work, and it's something that I typically haven't done. Usually when I do main characters, they tend to be human, and the creatures tend to be either companion animals or like a mount that they're riding. I usually don't make a main character a humanized or anthropomorphized animal like this, but it's a lot of fun. It's obviously a great jumping off point if you're kind of stumped about what to draw. You can just pick an animal and kind of riff on that animal for an idea for a fantasy drawing. Sometimes having just any option available to you is a little more difficult than boxing yourself in. So if you can constrain yourself and say, oh, I have to draw this, and figure out a way to draw that, like I have to draw an armadillo. That's one of the things that I think Inktober is helpful for, is it creates this little box for you, and it says you have to work within this box. And the sky is kind of the limit within that box, but at the same time, it keeps you narrowed. It narrows your focus. And you can do that on your own, of course, without anybody else supplying prompt words to you. You can sort of just tell yourself, I'm going to draw a parrot, and figure out how you're going to work that into whatever it is you want to draw. We'll kind of suggest the rear leg just a little bit there. I'm going to run the lines in this dagger's scabbard lengthwise, just to be in opposition of the hairlines so that that doesn't get lost. Between that and a heavy shadow on the underside, it helps to make that jump out a little bit. Having that heavy shadow down here too helps to really ground the character, give him weight. Notice I'm not being super precise about it. I'm just more concerned with just getting the general impression of rows. The rows are not a uniform width. The circles within the rows are not a uniform size. It's more the overall impression that we're concerned with. Oh, you could certainly approach it differently and meticulously make all these things uniform size, but it really isn't necessary. The eye perceives it as a row and perceives it as uniform, and that's really enough. And as I've said before, it's not an exact duplication of reality. It's just an impression of a reality. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's actually really freeing as an artist. You remove that need for absolute perfection and just go for impressions rather than perfection. Something that it's taken me a while to kind of wrap my head around, but once I did, it really made me a better artist.